24 places in the Holy Temple, the Kohanim and the Levites would guard in their locations, and a Kohen would patrol throughout the night so that the temple was protected and guarded. The Rambam tells us in Mitzvah 22 that we have a mitzvah to guard the Holy Temple and to patrol it each night. And then he goes on to say that the reason we do this is for kavod, to give honor to the Holy Temple. And the Chinuch writes that there was a man called the Ish Harabayis, and he would patrol throughout the 24 sites, and anyone of the guards that would not get up and say to him, Ish Harabayis, man of the Temple Mount, Shalom Alecha, peace unto you, it would indicate that this guard was asleep, and therefore this Memuna, this head guard, who was known as the Ish Harabayis, the man of the mountain, or the man of the Temple Mount, he had the right to take a stick and hit this guard, this Kohen or Levite, because probably he was asleep. And the reason why they had to guard it was to be awake. You have to be awake to guard it. So this is the mitzvah of patrolling and guarding the temple. The Rosh goes on to explain that what is the meaning of honor, as the Rambam himself explains in the Mitzvah 22, that the reason why they guarded the Holy Temple was not because they were afraid of enemies coming and attacking and destroying the Holy Temple. The reason why they guarded the Holy Temple was because you cannot compare a palace that has guards that are patrolling it and watching it to a palace that does not have guards that are patrolling it and guarding it. As the Rosh goes on to explain, what does it mean to give honor to the Beis HaMikdash? Shelo yisiach daitam, not to forget about it. As we know, we have a mitzvah, a similar mitzvah when it comes to wearing tefillin. When you wear tefillin, it says you're not allowed to be mesiach das. You're not allowed to forget that you're wearing tefillin. And Alter Rebbe explains in the Code of Jewish Law, this means when tefillin are on your head, you should not have sechik and kalis roish. In other words, you should not be laughing and joking around and then be lightheaded because you're wearing tefillin of God. And the same is true that in the Beis HaMikdash, one should not be lightheaded and not joking around because you're standing before God, who is the King of all kings, and His Shekhinah is resting in the Holy Temple. So this is the pshat, this is the simple interpretation of why we guard the temple, in order to add to the kavod, to add to the honor of the Holy Temple. What is the remez? What is the hint? How does this apply to the coming of Mashiach? The Rambam tells us in the laws of Hilchos Beis HaBechira, the laws dealing with the building of the Holy Temple. The Rambam says in chapter 8, law number 11, that before the morning star, there was another Memuna, the head of the temple. He was called the Memuna al hamikdash, and he would have Kohanim following him, and they would take two torches, and one would go to the east and one would go to the west, and they would walk through the temple, and they would make sure everything was in its proper place, and after they finished, they would say, Shalom, Hakol Shalom, peace, everything is at peace. However, the Rambam goes on to say in the law number 12 that on the nights of Shabbos, or the mornings of Shabbos, they did not take these two torches in their hand, but rather they would use the light of the candles that they lit before the Shabbos. So the question is asked, Ein Shavus b'mikdash. In the Holy Temple, there is no rabbinic prohibitions pertaining to the laws of Shabbos. In other words, we know that on Shabbos you're not allowed to make a fire. It's one of the 39 melachot, the 39 prohibitive labors. However, rabbinically, not only is one not allowed to create a fire on Shabbos, but one is not allowed to even carry a candle on Shabbos or carry an avuka, a torch on Shabbos. Why? You didn't make a fire. The fire was already made before Shabbos. This is a rabbinic enactment. It's called a Shavuos. Shavuos means to rest. Being that it's a day of rest, we don't want to do any of the 39 melachot, the 39 prohibitive labors, and furthermore, we even make a fence around the Torah to distance ourselves from anything that is related to some sort of a prohibitive labor. And therefore, we are careful not even to carry a candle, let alone ignite a candle. So the question is, in the Beis Hamikdash, you were allowed to violate the Shavuos. There was no rabbinic enactment on the Shabbos because it was God's house, and therefore you had the right to do anything you needed. You were able to slaughter animals in the Holy Temple, which is one of the 39 melachot. You were allowed to make fire in the Holy Temple, which is one of the 39 melachot. And similarly, you should be able to carry a torch on Shabbos as well. So the question is, Ein Shavuos b'mikdash. Why is it that they did not carry a torch on Shabbos, but rather they used candles that they lit before the Shabbos? And the answer on the level of remez, hint, pertaining to Mashiach is as follows. And that is that the final law in the laws of building the temple, which alludes to the final days, is the law of Shabbos. Why? Because the days of Mashiach is known as the day of Shabbos. Yoim shekulei Shabbos hamnucha l'chayei lamim. Today we have Shabbos, one day a week. When Mashiach comes, every single day will be like Shabbos. It's going to be a very long Shabbos. And therefore it says the Rambam that you should know that when Mashiach comes, we're not going to use the light of that day, but rather the light that we put on before the Shabbos. In other words, even though we have a mitzvah to build the Holy Temple, and we fulfill this mitzvah by building the first Mishkan and the first temple and the second temple, one may think that all the work that they did up until now is truly insignificant, not important, and not valuable, compared to the work and the labor of the third Holy Temple, which will be a temple that God Himself will build and it will descend from heaven. Comes along the Rambam and he says, no, the final law in the building of the temple is the law of Shabbos, alluding to the days of Mashiach. When Mashiach will come, the light and the aura and the energy that one will receive and one will benefit from will not be the light that will be created in that era, but rather the light that we, the Jewish people, have created throughout the days of exile, by self-sacrifice, by doing mitzvahs, by giving charity, by putting on tefillin, by keeping the Shabbos, by doing all the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. That is the way we are going to create the light Erev Shabbos before the Shabbos, so that when Mashiach will, God willing, come very, very soon, speedily in our days, we will benefit on the day of Shabbos from the light that we created before the Shabbos. And that is the answer according to the mystical level of why we do not go around with torches on the Shabbos, but rather we use the light that was created before the Shabbos. This is the remez, the hint for Mashiach. What is the drush? What is the homiletics and the halacha? We find that in the beginning of the tractate of Tamid, and similarly the tractate of Midos, these are two tractates that follow one the other. Both of them begin with the Mishnah stating that in three places the Kohanim guarded in the Holy Temple. And the question is, why do we need two tractates to start with the same exact halacha? Why does the Mishnah have to repeat itself? Similarly, the Rambam, when he talks about the locations of where the Kohanim and the Levites guarded in the Holy Temple, says the Rambam, that this law, the Rambam talks about in the laws of Beis HaBechira, the building of the Holy Temple. And the question is, why does the Rambam put this law in the building of the Holy Temple? Seemingly guarding the temple is an avoda, a job that the Kohanim have to do in the temple. And therefore, it would be more fitting for the Rambam to write down this law in the law of Hilchos Kli Mikdash, V'ha'ivdim, the laws dealing with the service that the Kohanim had to do in the Holy Temple. Yet, he puts it in the laws pertaining to the building of the Holy Temple. And the Rebbe goes on to explain that there are two ways of looking at the mitzvah of guarding the temple. Is it a mitzvah which is part and parcel of the building of the Holy Temple? Or is it a mitzvah part of the service of the Holy Temple? According to the Mishnah, according to the Talmud, it's both. It's a mitzvah, number one, in building the Holy Temple. And therefore, part of the building of the Holy Temple is to guard the Holy Temple. And that is why it's in the laws and the tractate of Midos, dealing with the construction of the Holy Temple. Also, you find it in the tractate of Tamid, dealing with the laws of the service of the Kohanim in the Holy Temple. Because according to the Mishnah, according to the Talmud, the guarding of the temple was also part of the mitzvah for the Kohanim to do the service in the Holy Temple. It was part of the building and part of the service. To use Talmudic terminology, chefza and gavra. It was a mitzvah on the building itself of the Holy Temple, and the gavra, the person, the individual Kohen, to also guard the Holy Temple. But from the Rambam, it seems very clearly, and we have evidence by the fact that the Rambam put these laws in the laws of Hilchos Beis HaBechira, in the laws dealing with the building of the Holy Temple, that the Rambam is indicating and implying that the law of guarding the temple is part and parcel of the building of the Holy Temple. And that is the kavod, the honor that one has to give the Holy Temple. This honor is part of the building of the Holy Temple. This is not some individual responsibility on a Kohen to go and guard the temple. It's a much larger thing. It's part of the actual edifice of the temple. And therefore, part of the edifice of the temple, to make sure that the temple is standing properly and has the proper honor, we make sure that in 24 places the Kohanim have to serve and watch guard. What is the soid? What is the esoteric concept of number 24? We said earlier that there are 3 places where the Kohanim watch. And there are 21 places where the Levites watch. Both the number 3 and both the number 21 are connected with the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av. These 3 weeks are called Bein HaMetzarim. It's a time when Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, breached the walls of Jerusalem, and it led up to the destruction of the first Holy Temple, and then later the second Holy Temple was also destroyed on the 9th of Av. And so these 3 weeks are a national mourning for the Jewish people. We don't buy new clothing, we don't wear new clothing, we don't take haircuts, we don't perform weddings or dance at weddings. There are some halachic authorities that say a sale, if some garments or clothing or especially shoes are on sale, you could buy it throughout the 3 weeks because we want to save money. But you're not allowed to wear it in the 3 weeks. However, be it as it may, the fact is that the 3 weeks are called times of mourning, national mourning. And so therefore it's customary to learn the laws of building the temple, to inspire us to be proactive rather than being reactive. And these two numbers, the number 3 and 21, are both connected with this encouragement and inspiration for the building of the temple. Number 1, three places where the Kohanim watched allude to the third holy temple. The third holy temple is the ultimate temple. It's going to be built by God and it will be forever. Furthermore, the number 3 alludes to the giving of the Torah that was given in the 3rd month of Sivan. However, when God came down on the mountain, it was only temporary. And therefore, the unity and the intimacy that God had with the Jews was only for a short amount of time. However, this connection and this intimacy that God will have with the Jewish people after the building of the third holy temple will be truly eternal. So the number 3 alludes to the building of the third Beis Hamikdash. 21, what is 21 places that the Levites had to watch on guard? 21 represents the name of God, the name of Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. When Moses asked God, what is your name? What should I tell them? So God said, tell them my name is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I will be with them in this Egypt, in this sorrow, in this exile, and I will be with them in future exiles. And just like God took us out of Egypt with an outstretched arm, with tremendous wealth, the same is true that God will take us out of this exile very soon with all of these blessings, and as we know, that will be wondrous compared to the wonders that we saw in Egypt. In other words, compared to the miracles of Egypt, the miracles of Mashiach will be a lot greater. And therefore, these 21 days allude to the fact that God is with us right now, and furthermore, He promises to take us out of this galus. That is the soy, that is the esoteric number of why we have these 3 and 21 guards over the Holy Temple, to remind us that God is guarding us and watching over us. What does Chassidus say? We began to talk earlier that before the morning star, the Mamuna, the guard of the mountain, of the Ish Harabayis, or the Mamuna of the Holy Temple rather, would go with Kohanim and take 2 avukos. He would take 2 torches, and he would search through the temple to make sure everything was in its proper place. And we said that on Friday night, they did not take these 2 avukos, these 2 torches, but rather they used the candles that they burned before Shabbos. And we asked the question, seemingly ein shvus b'mikdash, that in the Holy Temple we don't have to worry about a rabbinic prohibition of Shabbos, but rather we have the right to do this mitzvah in honor of Almighty God. So comes the question to mind, why is it that they did not use the avukos, the torches, but rather what did they do? They lit candles before Shabbos. The Kesef Mishnah commentary on the Rambam says that the reason why they did not use the torches Shabbos morning, before the morning star, to inspect the Holy Temple and patrol the Holy Temple, was since they were able to do it ba'ofen acher, in another way, in a simpler way, without violating the Shabbos, very easily by lighting candles before Shabbos. Therefore, there was no reason for them to have to violate this shavus, this rabbinic enactment, and there was no reason for them to take these torches. And therefore says the Kesef Mishnah that is the reason why they use the candles. Because if they have an easy way out, there's no reason to violate the rabbinic enactment. However, the Rebbe asks a question on the Kesef Mishnah, and he says, we don't find such a law in the Rambam or in the temple, because we know that even on Yom Kippur, if the Kohen Gadol was an elderly gentleman, and he had to go to the mikveh 5 times on Yom Kippur, So the water was very cold. It was from a well. So it says the Rambam that before Yom Kippur, they would take a piece of iron, they would put it into a fire, it would burn all night in fire, and the next morning, before the Kohen went into the mikveh, they would take the iron, throw it into the water, and it would warm up the water. And even though that is a shavus, that is a rabbinic enactment, says the Rambam, Ein shavus b'mikdash, there is no problem with a rabbinic enactment in the Holy Temple. So we see that even though they were able to do it b'ofen acher, they were able to warm up the water by simply taking hot pails of water and pouring it into the mikveh. If you take enough hot water that was cooked before Shabbos and you put it into the mikveh, you warm up the mikveh also. Yet, the Kohanim took a hot piece of metal that was on the fire and they threw it into the water, which is clearly a rabbinical enactment, a violation of a shavus. And yet we don't say because they could do it another way, which is by taking hot water and pouring it into the mikveh, they shouldn't do it with the hot metal. No, there's no problem. We can do this as a priori. So what is the reason that the Kohanim did not take these two avukos, these two torches, to walk in the Holy Temple? And the Rebbe goes on to explain that we stated earlier that the whole reason of why we guarded the temple was not because of our concern that perhaps an enemy will come and attack the Holy Temple. That was not our worry. The entire purpose of why the Kohanim and the Levites would guard the Holy Temple was simply because of kavod, honor, to give additional honor to the Holy Temple. Because you cannot compare a palace that has guards protecting it and patrolling it to a palace that does not have guards that are patrolling it and protecting it. So the Rebbe says, because we're dealing here with kavod, we're dealing here with honor. Honor means you want to do things in the most perfect and the most beautiful way. And therefore, to break a shavus, to break a rabbinical enactment, to patrol the Holy Temple would be a lack of honor. As the Rambam states already earlier, that this idea of breaking a shavus, of breaking a rabbinical enactment, that is a leniency. In other words, you shouldn't do it. But there's a loophole, you have a leniency. When it comes to honoring someone, you don't want to honor someone through a leniency. You don't buy your wife flowers and say, I want to honor you with these flowers. By the way, I got the flowers on sale. I got it on sale. That's not the way to honor someone. On the contrary, I bought you the most expensive flowers, the most beautiful flowers. I went out of my way. I went 2 blocks further to go to a nicer shop to get you nicer flowers. And the same is true here in the Beis Hamikdash. If one wants to truly serve God and bring kavod, honor to God, you don't do it through a leniency. On the contrary, you do it in the most proper and most perfect and most beautiful manner. And so in the Holy Temple, when they wanted to honor God on the Shabbos, the holiest day of the week, Shabbos itself is a day of kavod, a day of honor. To add to the honor of Shabbos and to add to the honor of serving God in the temple, what did they do? They did not use the torches on Shabbos. That would be a violation of a rabbinical enactment. But on the contrary, they made sure to light the candles before the Shabbos and use these candles to show their honor and their preparation and their concern for the dignity and the holiness and the beauty of the Holy Temple. And furthermore, that is the reason when they met one the other, what did they say? They would say one to the other, you should know, shalom, peace, hakol shalom, everything is peaceful. They did not say, hakol b'mkoimai, everything is in its proper place. On the contrary, they used the word shalom, peace, because peace is a nicer word. Peace is a word of kavod, of honor. Especially we know that one of the names of God is Shalom, is the word of peace. And so therefore, in order to increase in the kavod, in the honor of the Holy Temple, they said, Shalom Hakel Shalom. Peace, everything is at peace. And this is a lesson for us nowadays, that even though today, this moment, the temple is not yet built, yet every Jewish home is a sanctuary. Every Jewish home is a holy temple. And furthermore, especially a child's room, by the fact that in a room of a child, as the Rebbe has told us, there should be a Siddur and a Chumash and a Tanya and a Haggadah and a Tehillim and a Tzedakah box and a Pushka. And the child should put his name on the Siddur. And the child should put his name on the charity box. And every day he should put a few coins into the charity box. And every day to read a few words like the Shema Yisrael from the Siddur. And then to have a Chumash. And to read a few words of Torah from the Chumash. By doing so, this child is able to make his room into a Beis hamikdash, into a holy temple. And therefore, by giving additional kavod, by giving additional honor to these holy books, in contrast to the other books that he might have, which are nice story books and nice folk tales, etc., which are very beautiful and inspirational. But yet the child is told that when it comes to a holy book, you have to kiss it and you have to put it back properly. In contrast to another book, that is the way we give additional kavod. We give additional honor to God in our home, in our miniature temple. I just want to conclude with a story, being that we find ourselves in the 3 weeks. So they tell a story how prior to World War II, there was a vibrant Jewish community in the city of Landshut. It was a city in Poland. How it happened was that when the Germans came in, many of the Jews from Poland ran to Russia. However, in Russia, they were not really citizens, and therefore they did not have passports. And so they were exiled from place to place. One day, the Rav of Landshut was caught by the Russians without a passport, and so they threw him into Siberia. And then in Siberia, a few weeks later, they trumped up these terrible charges against him that he was a spy giving over information to Poland. And so they brought him to court. And in court, there were 12 witnesses. And each of these 12 witnesses gave testimony that they knew that the Rav was giving over information to Poland and he was truly a spy. The judge listened to the information, and then he said the following. He took his gavel and he hit it on the table and he said, I don't understand. The Rav, Russia allowed you to stay here. Mother Russia took care of you, gave you food and shelter. Mother Russia allowed you to escape from Poland. And now what do? You go and you give over the news and the information and the secrets of Mother Russia. You're giving over to Poland. How can you do such a thing? And furthermore, he says, you're a Rav, you're a rabbi, the Rav of Landshut. Doesn't your Torah say that you shall pray for the welfare of your country? Mother Russia is your country. And yet you go now and you give over this information to Poland, our enemy. The rabbi knew it was all over. However, he gathered enough courage and he turned to the judge and says, Judge, you are correct, I am a Jew and I am a rabbi. And therefore I do pray for the welfare of Mother Russia. I would never ever give over any information to your enemy. The judge took the gavel, he hit it on the table, and he said, okay, you're acquitted. Go home, you're free. He couldn't believe it. He knew for sure it was over. The judge walked over to him, put a piece of paper into his hand, and he walked away. The Rav of Landshut opened up the paper and it said, meet me tonight, 11 o'clock at my home, and it gave the address of the judge. That night, 11 o'clock, he goes to the house of the judge. He knocks on the door. A woman with her hair covered, wearing proper, modest clothing, opens the door and says, "Come on in. My husband awaits you." He sees the judge. The judge is wearing tzitzis. Strings are hanging out of his pants. He sees the judge is a nice Jew. And the judge sits him down and says, "I want to tell you the following story. Today in court, what is the reason that I acquitted you? I will tell you what happened. Many years ago when I was a child and I was taken into the Red Army. Before I went into the army, I went to my Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak of Lubavitch. And the Rebbe gave me a bracha. And he said to me, "You should know, when you become great and you reach greatness, remember to do a favor for a Jew." Years passed. I went into the army. I went up from one level to the next level. I left the army with many honors. And then Mother Russia honored me with being a judge. Today, when I was sitting in the courthouse and I saw all of this overwhelming evidence against you, I said to myself, there's no way for me to save you. If I save you, we are both going to be dead. However, as I was talking, my Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, appeared in front of me. I looked to the right, he was at the right. I looked to the left, he was at the left. I looked up, he was up. I looked down, he was down. Wherever I looked, he was right in my face. And he told me, remember the words. When you rise to greatness, make sure you do a favor for a Jew. And as I was there, and as I heard these words, I knew that I have to find a way to acquit you. I asked God to put the proper words into my mouth, and He did. And I said to you, you must pray for the welfare of Mother Russia. And you responded, I do pray for the welfare of Mother Russia. And so I had the opportunity to acquit you. And that's why you are free tonight. And so, my dear friends, when we study the laws of the Rambam, dealing with the 3 weeks and the building of the Holy Temple, we are to be remembered that the 3 weeks, even though externally they seem to be times of suffering and mourning, however, the potential and the ultimate purpose of these 3 weeks is to be transformed to the greatest days of joy. As the Rambam tells us that when Mashiach will come, these 3 weeks, Yahavchu Yom Elu L'Sasan L'Simcha, U'L'Moyedim Tovim, will be transformed to the greatest holidays throughout the entire year. And therefore, already now, we sense this joy. Already now, we sense this redemption. And therefore, no matter where we find ourselves, even in prison or in a dark place, even in Mother Russia, we have to remember that we're there for a reason, and we have within us the sparks of redemption and the ability to transform darkness into light. We hope and pray to see the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days and the rebuilding of the third Holy Temple that will come from God Himself.